Where's my ceasefire, Gibbs?
Well, they're working on it. It seems like. I hope it comes soon. Trump said he's going to get it going. It come soon. If not, then I hope he does what he says and arms Ukraine to the teeth, and that kind of thing. But I feel like he's trying to play hardball with both of them, and Putin and Zelensky are both. I do. Yeah, I mean, it seems like that way.
Okay, what hardball has he played with Russia?
I mean, he definitely said that he was going to arm them to the teeth if they didn't play their games. They backed off.
Oh, he talked?
Well, he did. I mean, that's all we've been doing is talking. I mean,
yeah, that's all Trump has done. Yeah, I agree.
That's all Biden. I mean,
no, Biden sent weapons. Biden implemented sanctions. Biden collected a coalition. Biden passed packages through Congress. Trump hasn't done anything except talk. Now, he said that the war was going to be over before he got in office when debating Biden. Then the campaign promise developed into 24 hours. And then 24 hours passed and nothing really happened. Then it became 100 days, Gibbs. 100 days is in 15 days. We're having a 100-day conversation right now. We both know it's not going to be over in 15 days, no matter how hopeful Gibbs, don't bullshit me. I care about this, okay? We both know it's not going to be over.
Sure.
Negotiations haven't even started, Gibbs. Negotiations haven't even started.
What do you mean? Negotiations have been going on the whole time.
No. Okay, to be clear, the way Trump's formula works, and he said this multiple times, is that first we have the ceasefire, and then we have the negotiations. And everything that has happened up to this point is the Russians and the American government trying to figure out how we can set up the first phase of negotiations under the cover of a ceasefire that may or may not break down depending upon how negotiations go. We have not started that. We have started giving concessions. For example, no NATO membership. For example, no American troops in Ukraine. No more aid being sent. We've cut off aid to Ukraine. We've cut off intelligence support to Ukraine. In order to get the Ukrainians to agree to an unconditional ceasefire, the Russians immediately rejected right in Trump's face. They then got them to agree to long-range ceasefires that the Russians immediately violated in the striking of Odessa and certain Donetsk region energy infrastructure. And then there were other violations. And then there was a strike in Sumy. And then there was a strike in Kiev and Ri, and all these different violations. And so, I mean, to me,
yes,
one second, $20 donation.
Because no other president has ever been such a licentious, degenerate wretch that would come in with a crypto rug pull. Literally pump and dump his prime donor stock on the White House lawn.
Thank you for the $20, Grassroots Hegemon. I appreciate that. And so I see all these concessions. I see the Russians agree to a civilian, and Trump said they agreed to a civilian ceasefire, and then the Russians won't even say they agree to a civilian ceasefire, and then they go on to strike civilians. And so Trump's ceasefires keep getting violated. Trump's agreements keep getting torn up. Nothing he's agreeing to is staying in place. Ceasefires mean ceasefire. And we haven't even started negotiating. And the war was supposed to be over in 24 hours. Right now, I see nothing but naivete by the people who are supposed to be leading the negotiations. Steve Witkoff is a fucking moron. He doesn't even know the regions he's negotiating over, and he admits as much on the Tucker Carlson show. And he's the guy who's supposed to be leading negotiations. Where are the experts you told me about on election night, Gibbs, that were going to be guiding Trump? It's now Tulsi Gabbard, it's now Steve Witkoff, and it's a bunch of people who don't know the region, and those who do know the region are those who are not empowered. Marco Rubio and Keith Kellogg, these are the people who are not dominating the conversation. These are the people who actually know a thing or two, even if I disagree with them in some of it. They at least have some expertise in the region. They've been marginalized.
The Secretary of State's been marginalized?
What was that?
Is that what you're saying? The Secretary of State?
Yes.
Has been marginalized?
The Secretary of State has been marginalized in decision-making about the war.
I disagree with this vehemently. So Ukraine's a complicated issue, right? That involves many, many countries now at this point. I would say, what signs of things working? The fact that North Korea, who was involved, is now pulling troops out as a sign of things changing. I would say Iran.
Wait. What did you just say?
Ukraine, there's reports now that says it looks like they're rotating North Koreans off the front line now that Kursk is kind of slowing down some. It looks like that. I mean, I can pull those up. I have those posted in my Discord. There's all sorts of stuff saying that Iran.
Wait. No. Do you believe that? Do you believe that North Korean troops are done in Ukraine?
I believe that at the current time they're rotating them out. I don't know if they're done. I don't think done. Rotating out means to me that they're pulling them off the front because to see what's going to happen. That's kind of what that indicates to me. I don't know if they're done. No, I mean if Russia decides they're going to keep going, then I don't think North Korea is done at all. If or also maybe they're negotiating a better deal because Kim was getting a pretty sweet deal with them. I feel like there's a lot of possibilities here, but I do think it indicates something's happening. Iran not being able to provide the drones that they were providing and having to pull specialists out due to what their situation is
They
going
haven't
on
been
with,
providing the drones for a very long time,
oh, but
really.
they were building factories up there and they've had to pull specialists out that will help make them. I mean, that's an impact as
yeah,
well.
but those factories
Like,
are in Russia. They're already
sure.
the drones, the
but they-
Shaheeds are no longer the Shaheeds. They're a different variant of the Shaheeds that are planted
Sure,
black.
but
They sound
they're
like
still
fucking
involved.
lawnmowers when they go over your head. Those are
I'm not
produced in
gonna-
Russia now. Those are not produced in Iran.
I'm not arguing that they're not. But their tech specialists were there overseeing for a while. Now them being out, it's probably going to lead to some small problems going forward. I'm not
Small
saying these are big things, but
problems.
sure. Listen. I'm not arguing that these aren't like these are massive things, but it does
They're
indicate to me
nothing.
that things that are going on. Now, let me just. I hate to do whataboutism again, but I have friends that live in Haiti, and up until the start of the Ukraine war, Haiti. Our neighbor, and I care about our neighbors or sovereign countries, has been a bigger trading partner here in the U.S. And I've advocated for a long time that we should send our money to Haiti, our neighbor, overseeing the overseas. Now, I get that you have friends over there, but it's because I have friends in Haiti. And right now, our best ally on the ground guarding the U.S. Embassy and stuff, they've had to work with, I don't know, gangs to make sure they have secure transport for people leaving. Now, that's kind of crazy, bad times. And they wanted the U.S. to negotiate, but, the Haitian government in exile didn't want that. It's all a complicated situation. And I've advocated for sending stuff there. However, instead, we've chosen to deal with a foreign power, Ukraine. Now, I'm not even going to say that either side's right or wrong because I think they've got all sorts of stuff. I'm not even going to
All
try to
sorts of
dismiss
stuff.
that it's a terrible, terrible. Yeah, it's complicated. Listen, I'm going to default to you on Ukraine knowledge. However, what I am going to say is that it is annoying and frustrating to the average American and the average Republican when we see all this money going to Ukraine, right? And then I turn around and see it included on a border bill. Right, like under Biden, and then we get Trump in office. He goes, "Well, we're gonna renegotiate things. We're gonna do stuff that's gonna benefit America." I see this as part of this. Yeah, I think he wants the ceasefire. I think he wants to be seen as this great peacemaker. And I think maybe he's struggling with two very hard-headed individuals like Zelensky and Putin that both have like very stuck insides and are both like have goals that are in drastic opposition to each other. I don't think it's just some easy thing that's going to be going on. And
That's what
when he
Trump
says
said it was
first
going to
100 days,
be. The Trump
Sure,
pretended
we haven't
on the
got to the first
campaign
100 days,
trail
but it's been
that
slowing
he
down.
had a magic cure for peace. That he was going to walk in there and he was so friendly with Putin and he knew
And things
him
been
so
changing,
well
though.
that he was
Things
going to
have
be
been
able to
changing.
do that. No, nothing changed. It was the same. It was never going to work. I said this on the day that this was not going to work. I said it was not going to work because there wasn't a plan. Then he got in there and there wasn't a plan. And now we're still at stage one. Negotiations have not begun. And let me tell you something, Gibbs. There's rumblings.
They've definitely been going on for the whole time.
Now I'll just throw out there like it's not number one on Haiti. You can both do stuff regionally and commit to your and keep your commitments to the Ukrainians. This is not instead. It's either Haiti or Ukraine. It's either
I'm just saying.
Japan or Taiwan. It's either Canada or France. No, we don't do that. We don't say it's either we care
Yeah,
about
for the old
Canada or
time.
we care about Mexico. We don't say that. But somehow if we're now making a dichotomy. It's either Haiti or Ukraine. I don't agree with that. But
Well,
at
it
this-
really happens all the
I'm
time.
telling you, man, honestly, at this point, I think Trump's prolonging the war. I think he's prolonging the war.
What do you think
So
happens if he
division,
just
let
steps-
me, I think there's a logic there, but what were you going to say?
Here's my thing. Say if Trump, all right, let's give two scenarios. Trump
Uh-huh.
totally steps out and just lets them fight, doesn't give
Yeah.
USA.
Are you
There's
not
probably the
curious at
Russian
all
win.
as to why I said that? Your eyes
Oh.
widened and then you immediately like, I need to say
No.
more.
No, I mean, you were talking for just gave me a whole lecture right there for like 5 minutes. I just want to respond to it real quick.
Okay,
But
okay.
here's my thing. Let's just run two scenarios. Let's say Trump either ceasefire didn't happen. Either Trump just like, I'm not dealing with this and totally steps out. What do you think happens? Or do you think Europe steps in? Okay, cool. If they do that, that's great. Then they can deal with it. That's their neighbor, right? Or B, Trump goes, oh, ceasefire's not working. We arm Ukraine to the teeth because Putin didn't want to do it. All right, what do you think happens then? Do you think that's enough to get them off? Or do you see us having to use European or NATO troops? Or what do you think the solutions are here? If you say it's prolonging the war, I don't think either of those prolong the war.
So Trump's
Like,
prolonging the
it is
war.
their fault.
Trump's belonging the war because he's treating the Russians naively, or he's treating them maliciously in the way that makes him the enemy of Ukraine, and he doesn't care about their interests. Now, I'm going to assume the former because I assume that's what would probably be at least closer to your worldview than the thing that I'm being scared of, which is that it's the latter, and that Trump is legitimately willing to cut up Ukraine with the Russians. Now, for the former, Trump said that that Russia would not have invaded if he was president. This was a constant campaign talking point. This is something you have repeated. You repeated it on my show many times. You repeated it on many other shows many times. And so what this was supposed to imply is that Trump is not only so diplomatically suave when it comes to the Russians, but that they respect him in a way that they wouldn't respect others. And he has a certain quality about them that throws him off. What's he going to do? He's wild man Trump. He's a cowboy, That's the idea. But the problem is, Trump gets up there after saying that if he was president, this war never would have started, the Russians never would have invaded because he's cowboy Trump. Cowboy gets up there, gets in his saddle, and then he says, first day in office, I might put sanctions on the Russians if they don't come to the table and agree to a ceasefire quick. And it's been 4 fucking months. And where's the sanctions? There's no sanctions. There's no new aid packages to the Ukrainians. There's been aid cuts to the Ukrainians. There has been concessions diplomatically on NATO, on troop deployments, on the gutting of organizations that Russia hated, like U.S. aid, on a welcoming Russian diplomats on American soil, on a facilitating of sanctions relief on the agricultural sector, as the Russians are now seeking normalization with the United States and trade. And so I've seen this happen, but I've seen
they were hurting
no
oil
pressure.
Because all the Trump. Hold on.
They've had trade negotiations. They're looking to open up trade between the United States and Russia.
But hold on, but you just said earlier Russia was being hurt by
they're being hurt by the global economic slowdown that has resulted from the tariffs being implemented, lowering oil prices.
Totally independent. And you think these are totally independent of each other?
Honestly, I think Trump could have done it with no consideration to that whatsoever. Yes. I think Trump could have done it, and that is a side effect of it. And let's say it isn't a side effect of it. Let's say that this was intentional. Do you think it's enough pressure? Do you think that $62 a barrel is enough pressure on the Russians?
You said something interesting. You said something interesting. He was, Trump ran on, if I'd been president, never would happen. Well, we can only look at history. And when he was president, it didn't happen.
And
but
now
under
the
Biden
Russians
and under
disrespect
Obama,
him.
it did happen.
The Russians disrespect him constantly. They like, for example, if he agrees to a deal, he facilitates a deal and says, no more. And Trump announces this with glee, like he's a hero. He comes to me and I'm supposed to feel joy as someone who cares. You want me to feel joy, right? You don't want these kids being blown up, these cities being blown up. I'm supposed to look at this and feel joy. He's negotiated a ceasefire for civilian infrastructure and energy. If that was true, that would be the biggest diplomatic achievement Trump has ever had in his life. I would have to get on my knees and say, thank God that the civilians are safe, at least to some degree. And within 2 hours of him announcing this, the deal was violated. The Russians hit infrastructure, not only civilian infrastructure, energy infrastructure, and then they said they didn't agree to a civilian ceasefire deal in the first place at all, meaning either Trump's lying or the Russians backstabbed him. And I actually believe it's the latter, because what's he supposed to do? Go out there and say the Russians agreed to this, but no, that would fuck up his whole plan. It would show the Russians to be too duplicitous to negotiate with. But he said he was the peacemaker. He said he was going to find a deal, and so he has to keep rolling. They agree to another deal, violate that. Agree to one thing in private, they announce another thing in public. This is old Soviet-style diplomatic tactics that Trump is falling victim to. This is stuff Molotov used to do back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, once again, though, like his argument was it never would have started if I was president. Now I'm here. Now I'm dealing with it, right? And you said you think that this other thing caused it was a side effect. I'm arguing that he is taking an overall approach that he has a plan. I think he's got some idea of a plan, some semblance, because it seems like he does, because things keep fucking working out the way that he says that they're going to work out, right? And
Are
so I'm over
they?
here going, oh, yes, so far they are.
Okay,
Like, you know,
like the
I get
encircled
that you want
soldiers.
well, hold on. I guess that you want day one, right? And everybody really wants day one. But what does
He
day one really mean?
promised it.
We're actually, hold on, we're technically not even at day 100 yet, but we're like getting real close. But like, what's interesting is, like that, your first 100 days, you know, this is basically the equivalent to day one. And what we're seeing is Iran pulling back, North Korea
100
rotating
days
out.
is day
We're
one.
seeing we're seeing negotiations.
Wait,
I
wait,
mean,
wait.
it's
Sorry,
pretty much
I need to
what it
understand
is.
your math here. Are we using biblical days now? Like 1 days, 100 days, 1,000 days? Is that what we're doing?
Listen, I mean, I think we're being
By
disingenuous
the
when
way, he
we
didn't
say
say
that you
days.
think
He
he
said
literally.
24 hours,
Yeah,
which is
I mean,
not
I
an
think
indicator
what
of days. So you got to use biblical
I
time if you want to get there, because
I'm
24
not gonna
hours
I'm not
is
gonna pretend
a
that
little
you
different.
listen, you can't pretend that if you've ever watched Trump ever on anything, then you know he uses hyperbole.
Yeah,
Like we
using
all know that.
hyperbole with
So
people's lives,
we have to hold
with
on, well,
people's
sure. We have to
lives,
say
man.
when we're at 100 days that he's working on it and he's commenting on it. I can find something from 6 hours ago where he's talking about like, oh, this is a direct quote. He said Biden could have stopped it, Zelensky could have stopped it, Putin should have never started it. Everyone's to blame. That
And that's a
sounds to me like
lie. That's a
oh
lie.
sure, I get it. Listen, you just admitted that he might have to lie to cover for somebody because it
You
would
just
fuck up
how
negotiations.
how
Hold
is
on,
it?
you just said that. You just said this, but hold on. Like it indicates to me that he's at least attempting something. Biden, what was Biden's plan? You say he's going to prolong the war. Well, what's Biden do? Giving piecemeal fucking weaponry to
You
him?
know
That's not enough for Ukraine to win, and just going to prolong it indefinitely into a meat grinder.
how
That's even worse than what
how
at least Trump is
beautiful.
trying new shit out.
How beautiful is it that
I mean, do you want it to end or not?
you cannot quote Trump without him lying? How does that feel that every time you read anything Trump says is a lie? Zelensky could have stopped the war. Any of these people could have stopped the war at any time. What does this mean? This implies that Zelensky is the main barrier to peace. These implies things. For example, Zelensky agreed to a completely unconditional ceasefire. Putin said no. At what point do we say this person is the barrier to peace? The person saying no to Trump's ceasefire. He cut off aid from the Ukrainians. He cut off intelligence support. People probably lost their lives in relation to that. And then the Ukrainians say, fine,
People are
unconditional
doing it.
ceasefire. Unconditional ceasefire. Russians say, nah. And then they keep attacking. And his strategy is, let's just keep waiting it out. Every time they do a strike on civilians, he says, oh, it was a mistake. A ballistic missile, you got to enter in the coordinates. But it's a mistake. I'm sure it's a mistake. I'm sure this strike on civilians is a mistake. I'm sure that strikes on the civilians is a mistake. Or his other response, which is, oh, I heard about it. It sounds bad. I have no clue what happened. That he's looking
what he's
the
doing
other
is he's
way.
isolating Russia.
He's looking the other
Russia.
way.
He's hurting. He's isolating
he
Russia.
isolating Russia?
He's taking out their allies or getting their allies to back off. Like I said, Iran,
he's
North
not
Korea.
isolating Russia.
We're seeing him fight a war with China. There's reports. I mean, you should know that there's reports of Chinese nationals maybe potentially being involved in the war now. I saw the other day. So listen, if he's fighting a war with China, a trade war with China,
he's not.
causing them to back
He hasn't
off.
isolated
Russia. This is well, not yet, but he's in the process of it. He's sitting there trying to get the peace talk. You just made the claim. You just made the claim that if Trump is making the war go longer, right? And I asked you at the beginning,
yes,
what's going to be faster? Even if the ceasefire falls through, if Trump totally backs out, and it's up to you if this take over, or if he decides, oh, Russia's not going to play ball, and he arms them to the teeth. All right, those both sound like me. More one way or another than what Biden was doing, which is offering just enough support that they can keep losing, turn it into a meat grinder, and either way, one of those solutions is going to end the war way faster than what Biden was doing. And how can you even argue that?
Because number one, okay, there's a few things we could talk about, but I'll just skip all the way to the end here and just say I don't think those are Trump's options right now. Because you can say that's what Trump says he wants to do, but the Russians are treating it as if the United States has no bite. They are treating it as if Donald Trump is not willing to send any more aid to Ukraine because aid is too big of an expense, which you believe, which much of his base believes, and might be believed by many of the people in his cabinet, which I know is believed by many of the people in his cabinet that is advising him. And so the Russians are of the belief that, well, if the United States is not willing to back up Ukraine with arms, well, then we can make maximalist demands. And while the United States might say that these demands are not really, good demands, for example, demanding Kherson, a city where they're hunting the civilians with drones. That's a ridiculous demand, a demand they will not get at the negotiating table, but it is one they say is necessary to start negotiations, not to have a peace deal, to start negotiations. And they haven't moved off that position 1 inch since the start of Trump's attempts to sway the Russians over to a reasonable position. They haven't moved at all. They've repeated old 1930s Soviet diplomatic tactics. Just restate the position over and over and over and over again until eventually you've moved your negotiating opponent all the way over to your position, or as close as physically possible. And Trump is kind of falling for it hook, line, and sinker with not only conceding NATO membership and all of this stuff that should have been conceded if it was ever going to be at the negotiating table for things in return. But I mean, we haven't even started the negotiating process. And when Trump steals, he negotiates, doesn't get respected now, and they immediately fall apart. How is anyone supposed to believe that when they're not respected in the future and we got the ceasefire deal, when that breaks apart, Trump's going to do anything?
This is rich because he told y'all in 2016, he said verbatim, listen, if y'all don't want Russia to keep growing, then y'all need to stop relying on Russian oil. And guess what? Now they rely on Russian oil more than they ever did before. He warned y'all this shit was going to happen. He told all the EU this. He said it. And then y'all go, oh, no, we're not going to do that. The EU, not you, but the EU did this. And they kept getting in bed with Russia, trying to normalize relations. You can't say that didn't happen. It did. So back to my question that you didn't answer. If he pulled out completely, yeah, it would probably cause, unless the European Union steps up to match what we're doing, then guess what? They'll probably lose. That'll be the end of the war.
No, wait. No, that's not true. I reject that framework entirely.
Oh, they'll fight to the bitter end, but it's going to be harder for them to fight to the bitter end than if we arm
them. That will prolong the war because they'll fight for longer. That'll go on for years.
If we arm. Well, more than Trump trying to get a ceasefire.
If Trump pulls out support completely, what's going to happen? And you might not believe this. The Europeans are going to try to take as much of that space as possible.
Cool. They're going to
let me finish. Shut up, Gibbs. And then they're going to take up as much as possible. I need to finish. They're going to take up as much as possible. And the Ukrainians are going to take up as much as possible, but it's not going to be able to make the difference. The Russians are going to gain ground, but the war is not going to end. It's going to keep going because the Russian demands are going to stay the same or they're going to increase. The Ukrainians are not going to concede to giving up their cities, and the war prolongs. So that is an outcome, if that pathway goes out, that the war prolongs, Gibbs.
So just to be clear, once you just set up, Gibbs, that I was actually midpoint rebutting what you said. So
no,
just
I needed to stop you on this because I reject your framework.
Sure, okay, but just to be clear, one, I'd reject that framework. Because if Russia's going to do it, and EU's going to step in, then that's on them, and they're prolonging the war. Cool. That's up to them at that point. And we've washed our hands of it. We've done Pontius Pilate.
You don't wash your hands. That still prolongs the war.
Sorry.
I'm saying this outcome still prolongs the war. Whether or not you want to say Trump takes responsibility for it, that's the outcome. The outcome that you would advocate for would prolong the war.
No, I disagree. Hold on. I'm saying that if we pull out completely, it's up to EU and the Ukraine. If they continue the war, not our responsibility and our fault. Us then we're not responsible for it. They want to keep going.
So now you're changing the entire framework for debating.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
However,
hold on. You haven't let me finish. What I'm saying is, then the other flip side was we arm them to the teeth and we give them all the weapons. And I, for one, I said this on your thing. I actually am pro-Ukraine. I want the war, like whatever. I want us to send all sorts of shit to them. I make more money that way. I have military-industrial complex stocks. If Zelensky and them want to fight with the best shit, let's give it to them, boys. But I'm in. So, like, if we argue, like, listen, if we give them the best of the best and we send our people over the train,
where has Trump indicated he's going to do that?
He's already said that. He's already said that if they don't play ball, he told us Putin, there was a famous that he's going to arm them to the teeth. That was his direct quote.
When did he say that?
You're sitting here. No, I don't know, a week ago. It's a thing he just said. Like, so what I'm saying is, when we're sitting here going, like, he talks all of it, both sides about all the time. He's trying to play hardball with both guys. Like, you're arguing that he's prolonging it when your one option is either he A gets the ceasefire after playing hardball, or B arms him to the teeth, or C pulls out completely, and then it's not our job.
Well, see, but
it's up to
this
them.
is I like how this pathway, like, well, in the pathway where it prolongs the war, it doesn't count because he's not responsible anymore, even though America made commitments to Ukraine,
Well,
but Trump did it, so it's not responsible anymore. No, that still prolongs the war. You're just trying to wipe your responsibility of the outcome of Trump's decision making. Now, on to your other
No,
thing.
Trump
On
did
to
it.
your
No,
other.
Biden made
No,
those commitments. Hold on, Biden made those other
no,
commitments.
the
and
United
it's
States made those
plenty
commitments.
of time.
Those United
Plenty of
States
time.
made those
Hold
commitments
on.
in the
Are you
90s.
arguing that? Are you
Our
arguing that
country
any
made those
country?
commitments.
Hold on. Are you arguing that previous presidents, when new administrations have come in, have not gotten rid of old treaties and other agreements
I
before?
agree that American
They
presidents have acted like snakes until yes. Oh, we agree to one. Wait.
So having
I'm
a
sorry.
new leader come to power and
Sorry.
changing an agreement when a different side
Yes.
put a deal forward
Yes.
is acting like a snake.
Yes. Yes.
I
Yes.
see.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I got it. I
100%.
got it.
100%. You
I
represent the
see.
country. If a nation negotiates something with you and they
the country doesn't
deliver,
want this
and
anymore.
they deliver, and then your country changes leadership, and the new leadership says we don't want to
You're acting
deliver
like-
our end of the bargain,
you're
that
acting
makes
like-
our country look snaky.
So,
Yes, it does.
You know what
absolutely.
you're doing? You're literally arguing with the entirety of countries existing in human
I'm
history.
arguing
Because
with, I'm arguing that
countries
countries
throughout
yes,
history
I
have had
agree.
deals
Countries
and
have done
changed them,
bad things.
renegotiated,
Yes,
or
yes,
like,
I agree.
no, it's not
Countries
done
have
bad
done
things.
bad
You're
things.
acting like
I agree
you're
that countries
acting
have
like
hurt their
worldwide
credibility.
diplomatic
The
things
question is
don't change
whether the
all
pain
the
to our
time.
credibility
All
is
the time.
worth it. And it isn't.
It's not
the pain to our
the credibility.
credibility is
You're
not
just
worth it.
arguing with world
Other
history and how it
countries
works.
are
It's the
reacting
whole
right
world.
now in reaction to our credibility. That's
Come on.
why we see European defense stocks rising. That's why the South Koreans are considering more and more attaining an atomic arsenal of their own. Our credibility does matter. Our credibility does matter. If
and
we
you're
keep
saying-
entering
so you're-
agreements and then we
You just
violate
said
them,
earlier that
people
you're fine
notice
with
that.
renegotiating deals. So if the
If
deals
you
aren't
want to
valid
be
no
an
more, we're getting
uncredulous,
taken advantage
snaky
of.
country, I just disagree with your value structure.
No, what I want is our country to actually be able to look out for itself and stop being
Yes,
taken
but
advantage of.
it
and
was
having to
looking
pay
out for
everybody's war.
ourselves when we
That's
were,
not
no,
ours.
it was looking
Listen,
out for ourselves when we
Ukraine-
acquired that
Ukraine
atomic
has always
arsenal.
been
We
Korea.
looked out for
Listen,
ourselves. Now it's time to pay
Listen,
the
because
dues.
because they're
Time
corrupt.
to
They
pay
were
the
corrupt.
dues.
Are you acting like all these former
they're
like
corrupt.
Soviet Union Republicans were
Oh.
corrupt? Like, listen,
Oh, they're
these are two
corrupt.
bad guys fighting each other. You're acting like the Ukrainians are some great bastion of democracy. They've always been corrupt. Forever. They've always all the Eastern Russia former Eastern Bloc countries have been corrupt. You act like that's not been a known thing.
What does
throughout-
this have to do
ever
with
since the Soviet-
anything we're talking about? We made those deals
So you're
knowing they were
acting like-
corrupt.
so
we made these deals
oh.
knowing they were corrupt.
So should we be
Because it was
beholden to
worth it.
another
We
corrupt
partially made
government?
these deals because they were corrupt.
Why
We
should
didn't
we
want
be
them to have
what-
atomic arsenals.
Oh my God, this is insanity! You're
This
saying
is
we
just
should
the
be beholden
history. I'm
to a
sorry, this
corrupt-
is the history of
you're
our
saying
of the
we-
diplomacy in
exactly.
Eastern
So
Europe.
you're saying we should be? You're saying we should be beholden to corrupt regimes?
I'm saying
absolutely not.
I'm saying if we make an agreement, okay. So your position is if we make an agreement with a regime that has a regime, you're saying so it's no longer a democratic country. This is now a regime. It's a dictatorship, according to Mr. Gibbs. Apparently, it's a regime.
I mean, yeah.
right?
I mean, we had elections during the Civil War.
Okay.
Why aren't they having elections? Yeah, it's kind of sus, but
That's just really stupid, and I don't know what else to
Yeah,
say
I mean,
about it besides it's fucking
well,
stupid.
yeah, it
because-
is really,
okay,
it is
Gibbs,
really
Gibbs,
stupid
let me ask you
because
a
we have
question.
modern technology and they
Gibbs,
didn't in the Civil War.
Gibbs, let me ask you a question. Okay, if you're voting in New York and I have a cannonball in South Carolina, can I kill you?
Let me ask you this: if you live in
Gibbs, don't be
Ukraine
fucking
and you have
stupid. Please
Starlink,
answer the
and you vote-
question. Answer the question,
can
Gibbs.
do cell
Answer the
phones
question.
exist? Do cell phones exist?
Oh, the election security guy wants everybody to vote by cell phone.
This
is
do
genius.
Starlink exist? Does modern technology exist? Oh, because we have
Gibbs,
electronic
answer
voting here,
my
don't we?
question.
Do we
Just
have
answer my
mail-in
question,
voting
Gibbs.
here?
I will mute you if you don't
Because
answer my
they-
question, because then you're
yeah.
avoiding. You're dodging, and I don't
You're
want to talk
avoiding
to
my
it
question.
because you're not trying to be. Don't be a scaredy cat. Answer the question. If
I'm
I'm
not
in
being a
South
scaredy cat.
Carolina, it's a very simple question, Gibbs. When you said
Sure.
Dylan, yes or no, I did the fucking stupid ritual. Do it in return, okay?
Okay, sure.
Okay, if I'm in
I'll
South
answer your question.
Carolina and I have a cannon and I fire it at you in New Jersey or Connecticut, is it gonna kill you?
No, but if I live in
No.
Pennsylvania and
The
you fired into
Russians
Virginia, then you will,
fired
sure.
ballistic
Or
missiles that
Gettysburg, you know.
killed children, and sue me,
Mm,
and they fired ballistic missiles that killed children, Kevin Ree. And when you're trying to
mm,
not only
ah,
line these people up at voting booths where they could be bombed, but you're also talking about
mm,
having the largest diaspora vote in Ukraine's history. You're talking about discounting everybody in occupied territory, saying none of them can vote in the election either. And you're also, on top of that, going to have to do this all for the first time during a war, getting all these
mm.
diaspora to come and vote. So,
Yeah, I mean,
like,
what's
this
really
is,
crazy about your
and by the
analogy
way,
is you
to be
just
clear,
dismissed the idea of total war by fucking Sherman, who literally came in and burned everything from one area to another in Georgia, and they still managed to vote after total war had been established.
Georgia
Before that,
didn't
they still
vote.
managed to have voting. No, they didn't.
Georgia
But they
was
still
part
held
of the
an election. Hold on,
Confederacy. They wouldn't have voted.
they still held an election like in the North and in this United States. They still held it in the parts that they could. Did they or did they not? Correct? Yes or no?
They can't be drone striked.
Oh, they can't be drone strike, but they
No,
could be
no,
bombed on
Abraham Lincoln
hell
cannot be
and their
drone
houses
strike.
burned
Gibbs.
down.
I'm sorry to tell you that they can't.
I
Gibbs,
see.
I'm
I
sorry.
see.
The
drone
rebels
strikes.
cannot penetrate
Uh,
into Pennsylvania. The rebels cannot penetrate into these places.
They couldn't
When we
drone
held these
strike him.
elections,
He didn't
the
even have a
North
Secret
was
Service really
secure.
protecting him, and somebody
This
could
is
just
not
assassinate him at a
comparable,
movie theater.
Gibbs.
Yeah, you're right.
Not
It
to
was
mention,
easier to
this is
kill
in
Abe
the Ukrainian
Lincoln than it is now.
Constitution. It's already dictated in the Ukrainian Constitution that this would
I just
happen.
want you to
Just
point
like
out,
it's dictated in the
you're
British
openly
Constitution during
admitting.
World War II. Was Winston Churchill a
You realize
dictator?
how
Gibbs?
silly you sound?
Was
You realize
Winston
how silly
Churchill
you
a
sound?
dictator, Gibbs?
When you realize how silly you sound when you say,
sound
"Oh,
silly, Gibbs. You're
couldn't- hold on,
talking
hold on.
about the
You
Civil
say,
War and
couldn't
comparing
drone
it
be
to like this.
yeah, it was worse. It was harder.
Jets
It was
that
worse.
can
It was
bomb you.
harder.
It's total.
And yet somehow they assassinated Abe
How do
Lincoln
you get people to line up?
easier than now.
Who's
So
gonna?
I'm saying they
This
have
is a
modern
real
tech now that we can do this. I'm just like, you're acting like they don't have modern technology and the
I'm
rest
not
of Ukraine
saying,
can't still
Gibbs,
vote.
I'm not
You're saying because this one area of
Gibbs,
Ukraine can't vote, but the rest of Ukraine
Gibbs,
can't hold an election. Is that correct?
You're being ridiculous. My point is
So-
not that it's impossible to hold an election in Ukraine. My point is, let me. Okay, well, you know what? Let me
see.
mute myself, and you can ramble.
I mean, I'm not been rambling. You've been interrupting me this whole time when I brought up one point.
My point has been that, number one, constitutionally, the Ukrainians during this period aren't supposed to have an election unless the Rada comes out and says, let's have an election. They're not supposed to do that. And the Rada hasn't. And the Rada has continued. The legislative body elected by the Ukrainians has continued to maintain that until the war or there's a peace or a general ceasefire that stops the war from continuing, then they will not have an election, just as was the case in the United Kingdom during World War II. Was Winston Churchill a dictator? Was the British government the regime in the Isles? I would say no, due to the circumstances at the time. And guess what? They had an election in 1945. Winston Churchill lost. Labour Party came into power. And that's what the Ukrainians intend to do by the end of this election. But here's the thing. The difference is they may not matter to you, but it is true that Sherman had a total war thing in Georgia, okay? He showed those Georgia boys some good old Yankee fury, down there in the land of cotton. Okay, I would like to thank the old Burns boys who were there, okay? Doing some burning. Where do you think we got the name? Anyway, point is, the difference between that is there was no election going on in Georgia. By the point the election happened in 1863, the front line was pretty stable. There wasn't any threat of, number one, the rebels like punching deep into Pennsylvania or doing anything at this point. The war had solidified, and it was really a question of whether it would continue because it was a slog that Grant was having in his Western campaign, and the slog of those trying to push forward down south while having no real success. Lee still wanted to go to the capital. He still wanted to do it. But I mean, the prospects of it were not there. The real question to the American public was, should we continue this war in the South to try to free the Union? And that's why comparing that, where you're in a line where you're not going to get blown up by the Confederacy in Pennsylvania, to you could be the furthest location away from the Russians in Lviv and still killed by terror bombs. And if you think the Russians are not going to take an election day to try to target Ukrainian democracy, like they haven't tried to target many other democracies in the world, including Ukraine's before, I find it to be naive. And so the decisions that Ukraine has come to make them postpone elections until after the war is over does not make them a dictatorship or a regime. It means that they're following the Constitution, and it would also be very expensive and dangerous to hold an election right now. So society, including their dutifully elected representatives, have decided that they'll wait until after, including Zelensky's opposition, including Klitschko, and all of the major opposition figures have also agreed to this as well.
So interesting, because factually, historically, I before I get interrupted, I just want to make sure that you know that you're factually, historically, extremely wrong about the Civil War. Gettysburg, the Battle of Gettysburg, begins on July 1st of 1863, and that would be, guess what? Middle of the election time. So that somehow, despite one of the biggest battles in American history happening during an election in
it's 30 miles, it's like 30 miles from my house. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, sure. So that while this is happening, they still were managed to simultaneously hold an election in all the areas that were Union controlled. Now, I don't care to that particular much, but to my 2 points here, when I bring this up, is one, you brought up drone strikes. They were able to assassinate Abraham Lincoln by literally walking into a theater and shooting him in the back of the head. So when you're sitting here telling me, oh, we have all this technology now, I would agree with you. Yeah, we have all this technology. And the argument that, oh, it's the front lines are drawn, they couldn't do this, whenever Lee is invading Pennsylvania in the middle of this war, election in time period, I think is laughable at best. Like, it's
Okay,
laughable at
so
best, and just a gross, hold on. It's just a gross misrepresentation of history. Now, so there's no reason that Ukraine couldn't have an election in the region of areas it's controlled, whether it's as secure as the U.S. election or whether it's got to do some kind of electronic voting system, whatever they can do. Now, I don't really even care if he's a dictator. I don't care if Winston Churchill was a dictator or not. We can argue he was. It's interesting Labor took over as soon as the war was over. I find that interesting. Maybe he wasn't as popular as people thought, but I digress. I don't really care about that.
No,
because once again,
he wasn't as popular? Do you know the history at all? Don't say things if you don't know the history.
Hold on. I do know. I mean, you don't know the history because you just told me.
Don't say maybe it wasn't that. Maybe Winston Churchill was hated by the British public. That's stupid.
You're not going to try to get me on a gotcha on a history question when you literally didn't know when the Battle of Gettysburg.
I knew when the Battle of Gettysburg took place. It's 30 miles from my house.
You were just wrong. And yet you told me the battle lines were established firmly by 1863 in total misgross representation of the truth, or you were just wrong. So you either just lied now.
Where is Gettysburg in Maryland?
Is it in Pennsylvania? Is it? Tell me. Where's it at?
I asked you
because
first. Why are you asking me? I just asked you where is Gettysburg. You said, where is it in Pennsylvania?
Because I know the answer. It is in Pennsylvania. It's in a northern state. It's one of the biggest battles in American history. And I rest my case. You just don't even know the history. You don't even know the history. And you're going to sit here and have the audacity to tell me I don't know the history. And I'm even, and you're trying to get me on a gotcha about Winston Churchill. When I said I don't, when I said when it was,
I asked you, I'm asking, no, okay, but where? Okay.
It's a northern state. Once again,
yeah,
hold on,
you're trying to play question. You're dancing around and you're avoiding the question.
It's in Pennsylvania.
My point about where in Pennsylvania, where regionally and where a location, Gibbs.
Is it a southern state or a northern state, Pennsylvania? Because Pennsylvania is pretty fucking far north.
Where in Pennsylvania? Like, is it in the south of Pennsylvania? Is it in this area of Pennsylvania?
Why does that matter? It doesn't matter at all. To your point, you're just fundamentally wrong. Listen, you're ignoring the point I'm making because you know you got.
You're ignoring my point because you know that my point wasn't about battles in the south border towns of Pennsylvania. My point was about them digging in deep to the big cities and fighting there and stopping voting booths, because in this war you can bomb people from thousands of miles away. Then you had to see them and you had to have them in line of sight. It's a different style of war. The protections for civilians is totally different. And while I agree they could have an election, do not pretend that the dangers for civilians are not more significant now, considering what Russia has done with its long-range strike policy.
Yeah, I mean, once again, like I said, it's still northern state. Then you're just wrong.
Like for example, your comparison for your guy with a gun. Okay, you're a guy with a pistol. You're a terrorist. You want to stop democracy in Ukraine. Boom, one shot with your one bullet back then because it's fucking 1863. And then the crowd grabs you and that's the end of that. Now compare that to now. You're a Russian officer thousands of miles away. Boop, 11 kids dead. It's a little different.
Yeah, it's harder now. I like then
How
say
is it
driving 30.
harder? You have to press a
Wait,
button.
I'll ask you
From
a question.
away,
Is it
you
easier?
don't threaten
You,
your own life. You only
so
threaten the lives of those you attack.
hold on. Who's got the ability to do that? You have militaries, right? Versus a regular citizen, could drive from Richmond, Virginia to Washington, D.C. and shoot fucking Lincoln in the back of the head. Which is harder? What's got a higher barrier of entry? Like, I mean, you're just
You
being
don't
ludicrous
you
if you're
don't
trying to be
destroy a
serious right
whole
now. Like,
democracy by shooting one
I,
guy. My point is that
yeah,
the
exactly.
threat to
I rest
civilian
my case.
life.
So that,
The,
yeah.
the
So my
one
point is,
bullet
once again,
cannot kill like
yeah,
100
modern tech.
civilians.
Listen. So once again, you're getting bogged down in this, and
I'm
because I mean,
talking
you're
about
just factually
ballistic
wrong.
missiles versus one-shot bullets. Like these are two totally different
Who has
destructive
ballistic
weapons.
missiles? Who has those? Do I have access to a ballistic missile right now?
No, the Russians have access to
Okay,
ballistic missiles. They will
okay,
fire it
but
at the voting lines.
do I have access to a pistol right now? Yes, right?
Yes.
Now, you're telling me that it's just as easy for me now, today, to drive up to Washington, D.C. and shoot a potential presidential person in the head. Or is it easier in 1865 for John Wilkes Booth to go up there and shoot this guy in the back of the head compared to me having to own a ballistic missile myself?
It's
and be able to
probably
shoot somebody?
easier for somebody to shoot the president in the back of the head than it is to have a
Okay,
ballistic missile in
thank you.
1864 or 5,
I
1965.
appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, even now, it's cheaper for me. It would be easier for me then. Like, I don't have the
Well,
access to a ballistic
that's the
missile.
thing is
Do I?
that's why the elections in Ukraine are frozen, not for any odd end terror attack. They're frozen for a major war where ballistic missiles are being fired at their country, and ballistic missiles are readily available by the person launching them at them every day. They've killed people last week. They killed people the week before that. Can we guarantee that they're not going to target these voting lines with, I mean, even if we got them to agree, they violated ceasefires before. I mean, there's a real reason behind
Do they
this,
have a mail?
behind
Do they
just
have a
treating
mail
it as a
system in Ukraine?
dictatorial decision.
Is there mail systems in Ukraine?
Yes, they have Nova Poshta and other mail systems.
Okay, so I'm interested. You're upset if they started voting by mail? Like, I mean,
I would not be upset if they started voting by mail. My point is not that they couldn't try. They could try to get mail to everybody overseas. They could try to get mail to everybody there. They could try to go around the Ukrainian constitution, say we're going to actually hold an election anyway. They could do that. They could spend all the money to do that during this war, only to have basically the same government anyway, which is probably what would happen. Zelensky would probably win, and we would probably be exactly where we started. But the risks for people's security are still there.
That's my point. That's my point right there. Even if he was voted in 100% and it was actually 100% legit, right? My point that I'm making is that this is not some great fight for democracy. This is a fight between a Russian adversary and a corrupt former client state. Like, that's the thing. Why is this our job? Like, we're not even, this reason I brought up Haiti is Haiti was a bigger trading. Why are we involved in this place in the first place? Now, I'm already sympathetic to the cause. I say, let's fucking arm them to the teeth. Let's sell them all sorts of shit. But like, I can see other Republicans going, why are we not helping Haiti out? Why are we not spending money here? Why are we even involved in this war? And basically, a lot of us think we're making it even longer because we're giving them just enough shit to keep going, but not enough shit to win. Why are we doing this? It's just we're turning into a meat grind. Like, these are valid arguments, and Trump is trying to do something different, and y'all are just immediately going, no.
Trump is no.
Like,
My problem isn't that he's not doing anything. He's just conceding to the Russians. He hasn't applied any pressure to them. If he wants, for example, tariffs on Ukraine, but no tariffs on Russia. We trade more with Russia than many of the other countries on the tariff list, including that weird Penguin Island fiasco or whatever mistake that they included. So my point is that so far it's been a lot of pressure on Ukraine, very little pressure on the Russians, concessions for the Russians, and the Russians are preparing for new offensives, and they're violating the ceasefires that they have agreed to. They've now, in the last few days, they've announced a draft, or it was last week that they announced a draft that is the largest draft in 14 years. They're getting ready to expand the war once these negotiations that have yet to even start inevitably fail. And because so far Trump has shown no willingness to use the stick when it comes to either military pressure that makes the Russians know that the attacks that the attacks from Ukraine and attacking Ukraine is not going to benefit them in the long run, because they think he's going to pull out, because they think he doesn't care about continuing to send aid to Ukraine. And you're advocating here for exactly that purpose. So what I'm saying is that will extend the war
Well, what
that
is the
way.
stick?
And
What is
the
the
other
stick?
way I
What is the
see
stick?
of, like, for example, surging aid, if he does that, I'll give him credit. I will give Trump credit and I'll say, finally, somebody did the thing I asked for people to do back in 2022, 2023, surging a ton of aid, the stuff I was critiquing Biden for, right? This isn't something I've been silent about, that I thought Biden should set more. This is something when we negotiated each deal, I thought it should be more, and I talked about it at the time. So I would be staying consistent with my policy there. But here's the problem. Zelensky recently just gave Trump everything that you and a lot of the base have been asking for when it comes to costs. Besides the fact Trump has lied about cost, lied about how the United States has sent more, lied about the amount of aid we've sent with a 350 billion number that he pulled out of his ass. And he actually increased from an earlier number. He was saying 300 billion before. Then one day he just started saying 350 billion. And I guess that was the new number. Nobody ever asked about it anymore because he throws out these numbers like crazy. But Zelensky recently said, let us pay for the weapons. He said, I want to buy the weapons. He said, I want to buy the Patriot missiles. We will pay for them, please. And the plan probably is the Europeans will pay the Ukrainians to pay the United States because they don't have the budget for it. And so they probably have something lined up, either where Ukraine will have some section of the budget to pay Patriots, or they'll be supported with Russian-backed, like the Russian assets that we seized. Point is, they're getting the assets to pay for it. So this means even though we committed to support Ukraine in the 90s because they gave up their atomic arsenal, if you wanted the reason, that's one of them, or because Ukraine came with us into Iraq, or Ukraine came with us into Afghanistan, or Ukraine has generally been a pretty strong friend of the United States in any of these scenarios. Yeah, if you're Googling it, Ukraine actually lost lives in Iraq, actually. Some of their young men died for us.
Oh, that's not good. Yeah, they were part of the coalition. I'm not arguing that.
Okay, so I think that we are fulfilling this old debt, and now they're offering to say, you know what, don't even fulfill a debt. We'll pay for you to send us weapons to defend us in the way that you said in the 90s we should be defended because we have a right to our borders. And you want to know what Trump said in response? They shouldn't have started a war they weren't going to win. They're 20 times bigger than them. He
These
like
people
laughed it
have had
off.
8 years.
Why would he laugh
8
it
years
off?
to
But-
develop their
Wait,
policy.
thank you for the
you're-
$20.
The policy
Oh.
isn't the point. The power is the point. This is the exercise in cruelty it was always intended to be.
Thank you for the $20. Continue.
Yeah, I mean, but here's what you're kind of doing, though, right? All right, so like, I'm not even of the contingent of Republicans that you're mad at. Like, that's what's crazy. Like, you telling me earlier to argue with you, right? I am with a contingent of Republicans. You probably want more to be louder. Like, I'm already for. Like, I don't even give a shit if they're corrupt or not, right? Like, bro, I'm over here like, hey, I like military-industrial complex. I like American manufacturing. I like bro. You don't think that cranking up sending goods to Ukraine is going to be good for American manufacturing? Like, and this is what I'm saying. Like, Trump's like said before. Like,
But that's
all
my
right,
question.
listen,
Then
he's
why
always-
would he laugh off them saying they want to buy it? This should be something he celebrates. Like, hey, they finally came
He
around.
probably is. Like, it's
No, he
because-
laughs it
listen,
off. He said that
because
they
we
shouldn't have
don't know
started
what's
a war.
happening. Like in the cold, he keeps saying, "I talked to Putin. I talked to." He said he's had conversations with all these people, right? Like, you think that Trump, you've already admitted, so Trump will say something and then do something totally different, or like rebrand something, or we don't know what's going on. Like, you're saying negotiations aren't happening. I don't believe that at all. I think negotiations are absolutely happening, and I think you even said you think Russia probably agreed to a civilian thing, and then they, we got him, and now Trump's pissed. I think that Putin's playing some chicken. I think Zelensky is mad. But if I was Zelensky, I would be pissed too. My people are dying, right? And like, this motherfucker won't give me what I want. And what I want is to be able to get the materials to whoop that guy's ass. I get it. But like, Trump's over here, I feel like in this rock and a hard place. He didn't start this war. Now he's promised to end it. And he's dealing with two people in like positions that are unattainable to each other. And I think that he's sitting here
So
trying to play
at
hard.
what point should he have not made that promise then? Maybe he should have made a promise that wasn't so easily attainable if the Russians aren't willing to make concessions that are reasonable and are still making demands like they want to conquer Kherson. I've been to Kherson. I don't know if you know anything about what's going on there. They're hunting people
right there. We're literally in the like less than 100 days in. I get that he's already
But he
tried.
made a quick trial. He said it was going to be quick.
Sure. I mean, this is pretty quick. If he gets
This
it
is
done in
not
the first
quick.
100 days or
He's not
150,
going to
that's
get it
still
done.
quick.
He first.
Yeah, but it's faster than anything Biden has done, which is nothing. He's basically giving y'all minuscule
Trump
amounts
did not
that
make.
just
Biden did not make a
you're going to fight
ridiculous promise.
trench.
Biden did not make the ridiculous promise that he was going to end in 24 hours.
The amount of support Biden gave enabled this to become a fucking World War I post-apocalyptic nightmare, basically, is what he allowed. He gave him just enough to turn into a
Do you
goddamn meat
think?
grinder.
Do you
Like,
think? Wait,
that is what
wait.
has happened.
To be clear, I agree that more aid should have been sent, but I don't think you would have really. Would you have wanted to send any aid to begin with?
Yeah, me, yeah, I would have been I'd be like, hell yeah, bro, because I fucking have military-industrial complex stocks. I think there's a lot of Republicans that have been like, it's better to send too much and get it over with than sit here and play piecemeal games and extend this bullshit where
Okay,
thousands and thousands of
I
people died every
agree.
day.
I agree
And now
that
they're
we
like,
should have
now
sent
Republicans are like,
more
let's just end it.
at the start. But the thing is, even if that was your position then, and I hope it was, we're in the boat now where we would probably need to surge weapons for the Russians to take us seriously. Because so far, the Russians haven't taken Trump seriously. They wouldn't have laughed at his face and overthrown these ceasefires with so much ease. And we wouldn't have the headlines about these dead kids making Trump look like a fool if they were taking Trump seriously, to be blunt. So what we need to do is make the Russians take us seriously through aggressions, through, okay, $50 billion aid package coming down the tube if nothing happens. We have a vote this day. So here, it's tick, 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 tick. That's pressure. But I haven't seen anything like that. I've heard him say we're going to do sanctions day one. Then we've seen no sanctions packages introduced. But we have seen the possibility of sanctions relief in the agricultural industry being discussed. And they say they're going to facilitate that. So far, it has been a all carrot, no stick approach under either the illusion that that's going to be enough to get the Russians to the table, or because Trump doesn't want to put the resources into the stick.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the surge would have been better. I would have been supportive, and I think there's some Republicans that would have been supportive. That I think that part of it is they continue. I think it's the problem is that it's continuously sending more and more aid, right? As opposed to if we just sent a massive chunk up front, this could have been a whole different ballgame. And I think Republicans are sick of that across the board because they see this as waste, right? Like, and like I know that sounds harsh, but it's like, why are our tax dollars going over here as opposed to being spent at home? That's the argument they're making. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the end solution is here. I don't like people dying, right? And in some ways, pulling aid all the way out. If Russia just conquers them quickly, yeah, that's not the option that Ukraine wants, right? But I mean, do you think they're going to go to a guerrilla civil war that's going to go down to like I don't know, Afghanistan, where there's like ratios of 100 to 1 people willing to fight? I don't think so. I think they're close enough ethnically that they'll like probably slow down. I don't think there's going to be the Al Qaeda of Ukraine fighting the Russians in perpetuity. I mean, do you see that? Like, I mean, really?
Yes.
All right, well then I don't know. Maybe that happens. I don't foresee that. My expectation is probably not have that happen. I feel like
What
if
do you
Russia
think
conquered them-
happens to all those like Azov and right sector, or all these people who lost their parents, or like do you think they just like forget?
like the Azov Brigade, is that what you're talking about?
Or I mean, like the hardcore people who would never ever surrender, and the people who have felt so much pain. And like with more occupation comes more pain. It tends to be the case. I mean, for example, after World War II, the bloodiest war in human history, right? That after that, you'd be tired, yeah, nationally. As a country, you just fought that, especially if you're from the Soviet Union, where let's say the Nazis were not nice, right? You'd agree?
Sure.
Okay. The Ukrainians fought a civil war for the next 10 years after that against the Soviets. It was a brutal 8 years, I believe, to 1953. So their war was from when the Nazis crossed the border up to 1953. So I would say that while it is hard to imagine with our proclivities living in the United States, considering what we see on TV, to imagine a people doing that, but look at how hard-headed many nations can be in defense of their national idea. The fact that Ukrainians still even exist as a nationality after years and years of Russification shows, I think, a certain amount of durability to the Ukrainian idea. I mean, we saw that with Ireland. We saw this with all sorts of people.
Yeah, I mean, sure, maybe. I don't know. Like, I mean, okay, like this is.
I'm not
I
even
don't really
saying
know
that
what I
that
think
guerrilla war
would
would be successful. I'm just saying that I think
No,
there
I
would
know
be
that.
one, and then the war prolongs in a different way. It's like when people say, "Oh, occupation still means peace." It depends on the style of occupation, and the Russians' style of occupations is not what I would say is a quaint one.
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't disagree that there might be insurgencies. I don't foresee it being a long one. I guess my argument that I'm making is if they were just to completely lose, right, then Russia would stamp them out, or it would be like a very minor thing compared to the just massive amounts of casualties that it is now. It wouldn't be just this like forced conscription and people dying on both sides. I don't know, like, right, like I'm not advocating for that. I like listen, you know, my family fought the Texas Revolution, back way back in the day. I very much like about having your own nation state, like if you want to be your own thing, right? I get it. I get it. And if they want to fight, more power to them. Like that's their thing. I also just on the same side, I also don't think that we are necessarily obligated to do anything to anybody, really.
I
'Cause
don't think
I
we're
think it's
obligated to give anyone anything, but let's be clear in Ukraine's case, is they did stick our neck out historically multiple times, whether it was the atomic weapons, Iraq War, Afghanistan War, multiple aid missions to the United States during natural disasters, or different points where they supported us after the Soviet Union collapsed, and the agreements we made with them included in the scenario that they face now. If they were attacked, that we would come to their support. Now, the support, what that would manifest in, was always vague, but I always believe that we should still keep some commitment to the letter of what we intended or the nature of the statement. Like if I promise, oh, I'll help you if your car breaks down, I don't just mean I'm going to throw a lug nut out the window. I mean I'm going to, support you in some way, right? So, and my belief is that to keep that credibility is beneficial to the United States. To stop a wider war in Europe is beneficial to the United States. A lot of this expanded ammunition production that we've marked as Ukraine aid, which was actually invested here, is probably beneficial to the United States if we're re-entering a period of large-scale interstate warfare like we've saw in Ukraine, which is heavily reliant on artillery production, especially since for the last 20, 25 years, the way we've cut our teeth is by finding men in caves and blowing them up with $100,000 ordinances, which is a little different than the war we're seeing in Ukraine. So I think that there are strategic arguments for the United States in support of Ukraine. I'll stop myself there because I do want to come back to the statement you made about democracy. This is not a war about democracy, but I don't want to overwhelm you.
so yeah. Unfortunately, though, I am about coming to my end of time that I have to get out of here. Though, here in about like 3 or 4 minutes. We've gone
Got you.
pretty long time
We
here.
did go long.
If that's all right, yeah. As far as the democracy, I mean, like this is my thing with the democracy thing was I don't see Ukraine as just any special beacon of democracy. I like democracy. I would like to see it spread. I just don't see them as this special beacon, especially when they're not even having elections currently, even in their state. Like, I just don't see with modern technology. There's not a reason. Like, listen. I like election security. Right, I'll admit that right here. But to apply the same standard of election security that I want in the U.S. with like everybody getting a voter ID, which we talked about earlier, which I'm fine with making the government can just give it to everybody, which is a standard I would like. To Ukraine in the middle of a war, I don't think it's fair. I would definitely allow like mail-in ballots or something, or like online voting where you try to like verify with your personal info. Like there's all sorts of ways. Maybe the UN came in and guaranteed voting. Like there's like a lot of ways, a myriad of ways, right, that I would be acceptable. But I just don't think it's fair to say they're the special bastion of democracy when they're not even currently allowing elections. They have a history of corruption. I mean, not that Russia's any better. I just don't think that's a fair.
Let me rephrase this because this is, and we'll end with this. My framing is not that Ukraine is a special bastion of democracy. There are things about Ukraine's democracy that is special. The amount of power that their people have, I think, in like challenging their government, and I think they have, generally speaking, pretty libertarian-esque belief systems. Not saying economically necessarily, but I mean this kind of you mind your own business, we'll mind our own business is a mentality that I've encountered wide across Ukraine. And there's certain things that are special about their democracy compared to other European democracies, like culturally. But yes, their democracy is flawed. The democracy is very flawed. But when our nation started, our democracy was being established by vagabonds that were robbing banks, shooting bank tellers, kidnapping cops, and starting like thievery circles in order to like pickpocket our way into power. And that was the start of the American Revolution for principles like democracy by a bunch of radicals and vagabonds. And at that point, our democracy was flawed, even when it did manifest as more than just bank robberies. We had things like slavery. Women did not have the right to vote. We had all these problems that made our democracy flawed, but that did not mean that crusading for the principle of democracy in this long march for something better was still not something worthwhile. And in Ukraine's instance, they don't have something nearly as diabolical as that under their belt. They have the worldwide known corruption, an issue of greed that has plagued man since its beginning. And they're trying to deal with it. Public biddings are now done publicly on government websites, making it much more transparent and saving the government's billions of dollars since the Euromaidan revolution. That was a reform that was implemented. The police in Ukraine are not nearly as corrupt as they used to be, but most importantly, the people's vote has been maintained. When there are votes, those votes are counted, and election monitors see that it matches the vote outcomes at the official polls versus the unofficial exit polling, meaning that there is a functional democracy that allows people to pick representatives and pick those who can change the system. There's an ability to change and make the country better. There is none of that in Russia, and there will never be that in occupied territory. So there is a fight for democracy here if you want the ability to change your country for the better and still maintain a civil society.
Yeah, I mean, just I guess like last thoughts on this. Before I go here, I agree. I am from the school of thought that Russia is an adversarial power. You know, when we talk multipolarity, I've never thought Russia's been our friend. You know, we've been able to work with them. You know, even during the Cold War, we were able to work with them on certain issues. I think that they're culturally similar enough that it's easy. I see China as a much bigger threat, but yeah, I am under no influence, illusion that Russia's not is our friend, right? They're definitely an adversarial power, in my opinion. Yeah, and like I said, I'm a Republican contingent that would like more money to go to Ukraine and not more money, more weapons and stuff to go to Ukraine, and I would like to sell stuff to them. You know, I'm all for all these things, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm willing to let Trump play it out and see how it goes. You know, hopefully he does get a ceasefire and people do stop dying, because that would be the best for everybody involved. But yeah, I can understand some of your frustration, especially with it being as close to home as it is for you. On that note, I'm Admiral Gibbs. If you hated it or loved everything I said, check me out as Admiral Gibbs. Thank you so much for having me here, Mr. Burns. It's been a wonderful time. I've really enjoyed it, and I wish you a good rest of your night.
Okay, have a good one, man. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Woo! You know, 100 days in, I've not been convinced. Dylan, you're a masochist? I am what I am.